I'm going to show you the process to move Lovable to the host of choice that I have, which is Railway. Taking an application that was built on Lovable, taking it off of Lovable and moving it to our computer and then putting it on a different host and a different database. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm Courtney and I help businesses take their AI coded and no code apps from 80% to done. I'm going to show you some steps of that today. If you need help with yours, just use the link in the description or in my bio and get in touch with me. I'll help you with your app too. Right now, Lovable tends to lock users into the Lovable Cloud. And if it does not have quite the features that you need for your application as you go along, you're stuck there. Let's go ahead and dive right into that. The app we're working on today is this fitness workout app. It's to track weightlifting workouts. It's just a little demonstration app here, but it has Lovable Cloud enabled, which means it's locked into Lovable's system. It has their database, their backend, their edge functions, everything like that. There are some features that are difficult to use when you are locked into Lovable Cloud. They don't let you do certain things. You don't really have access to control the database at all. It does use Supabase as a backend, but as you can see here, you cannot move from Lovable Cloud to an actual Supabase platform backend that you can edit. As an aside, Bolt does let you do that. You can actually take the project from Bolt and migrate it to Supabase and then take over that project yourself, which is nice. It seems that Lovable has decided to take the approach of sticking it in their cloud and leaving it there. We're going to go through the process of moving that off. The first thing that I want to show you though, before we push this to GitHub, is that in the backend here, there is a .env file. And this is where it has all of the Supabase secrets. The thing that will happen though, is when you go to sync this to GitHub, which is what we're going to use to pull it down to our computer and ship it somewhere else and publish this app elsewhere, is that this secret file would be committed to GitHub and would then be pretty much permanently in the history unless you go through and manually remove it. We don't want these secrets to be in the history of GitHub. What we need to do is first look for this gitignore file and add the .env. By putting my .env here, I am telling GitHub to ignore this file and not upload it. And you can see there's other stuff in here that we want to ignore as well. Some log files, these node modules, things like this that are pretty much pre-built into the gitignore because of the way Lovable built this app. But basically what this file does is tells GitHub, hey, this file right here, this .env, is supposed to be on the computer, but not uploaded to GitHub, and we're not copying that file. Now we can put any sensitive information, any files that have sensitive information, or any files that have downloadable modules that the user can get anywhere. We can put that in here so that our GitHub package stays small and stays secure. We'll go ahead and close that change. Let's close the rest of these files. There we go. There's our save. Okay, that is saved. And now we can close the file. So now we have that saved so that this .env will not end up in GitHub. What we're going to do is close our file editor. We're going to go over here to this GitHub icon, and we're going to connect this to GitHub. If you don't already have an account, you can go to github.com and get one. It is free. I show in several of my other videos how to get those. So just check out those videos and you can see me get a GitHub account. We'll just go ahead and connect here to a project. We can see we're already connected to my account here. Click transfer anyway. And now we have this GitHub repo is connected and we could view it on Git. So there we are. We're just going to keep an eye, or we're just going to remember what this is here so we can look it up when we pull this down to my computer. So now we have our files on GitHub. What this does not do is put our database on GitHub. Now we have a problem here with this application when we go to move it. And if you're moving an application from Lovable Cloud, you'll have this problem too. And that is we cannot get the database and move it over because that information is not exposed to us. It's locked up here in the cloud over here. But because this application has not been used a whole lot, it mainly has demo information that we've seeded in. And we have in the code our .env file with some connection strings, and we could use those to probably export the information. So we'll test that out and see if we can export anything and import it into a new database. But basically, we're going to rebuild the database using our migrations. So we have the initial migration that set up this database, and we're going to use this to build a new one. Okay. You don't have to copy this file or anything. It just got uploaded to GitHub. Right. The next thing we're going to do is pull up our GitHub desktop, which you can get for Mac or Windows. we're going to look for this AI workout coach, which is what we just created. We're going to select that repository and clone that to our computer, and we're going to fetch it. The next thing we're going to do is open up that repository locally. I'm going to use Visual Studio Code. It's a free application that you can get. I'm also going to use Claude Code, and I will put links to all of these in the description, so you don't have to remember them. You'll see them all in the description of this video. This one here. Let's go ahead and open this up in Visual Studio Code. And here we have all of those files. So this should pretty much match. Now look at that. We have a .env and our gitignore that had .env, and Lovable ignored that, didn't they? Just pushed everything. Everything. Now for security, we have a little bit of an issue in that it completely ignored our gitignore. So we were double ignored here and ended up with our .env file being pushed to GitHub. We don't want that. So we need to go through and remove it. What you can do with this is I'm going to use Claude Code here, and we can just have Claude Code help us correct that and remove .env from the GitHub history. We're going to say the .env file got committed to Git and should not have been. Can you please assist with completely removing it from the Git history? Now it's going to check and see where that file is, see if it's in remote. And we're going to get rid of that. We'll let it go ahead and install this tool that it needs to do the task. And you can just follow along and do this task yourself. Same way I'm doing it here. It may be slightly different on your computer depending on what you have installed. We're going to go ahead and let it update the repo there, having removed that. Now that we've made those changes, we're going to go ahead and publish these. Give it a little message. There we go. And it is now connected to GitHub without our .env file. And let's go ahead and add the .env file back and make sure it doesn't go to GitHub because we want it to stay locally here. So what we're going to do is right click, new file, type in .env. And the first thing we're going to check for is, does it show up here? And it does not. So it is not in the list to be sent. And then we are going to put in, I copied everything from the old env file. I put that in here. You can get that from Lovable over here. Put it here. And there we are. Our env is recreated and it is not going to show up in GitHub anymore. So that we have that security thing taken care of, and you can do what it recommends here, rotate those. Because this is a private repo, I'm not terribly concerned, but we do want to make sure that we don't share any repos with that information. Plus, it's just a demonstration. But if it were not, you might want to go rotate your keys. That's a topic for a different time. We're going to go ahead and open a new tab, new conversation in Claude Code, start to learn about this application, prepare it for running locally, and for setting up a database in Railway, migrating over from Supabase here. Let's take a look at how we can do that. I'm going to put this in plan mode. So I click a couple times down here in plan mode, and we're going to say something like this. We're going to say, look at this app and understand what it does. Then look at the setup for auth and database and see that they're on Supabase. I'm setting the groundwork here. I want to transition over to using plain Postgres with JWT auth, and both the database and the app will be hosted on Railway. So I'm telling it where I want to put it. I'm bringing up that we might need to build an Express backend for the AI Edge function that is in the Supabase folder. But what I'm talking about is this. We have this function right here that does the AI workout generation that's in this application. The way Lovable Cloud sets that up is they make a single function. It's not a whole backend. It's just one little task that runs in their cloud whenever you need to generate that. Supabase handles the operation of that sort of a task. But what we need is the whole backend that can actually run that task and send the information back to the app, because we want to move away from Supabase and move away from the Lovable Cloud. That's what I'm explaining here. And then I want it to bring itself up to speed on how to do these tasks. I don't want it to pull this from memory, so I'm telling it to look online. Claude Code has the ability to search the internet and find the latest information. Not all editors do, but most do. If you're using Cursor or Windsurf or Claude, sometimes depending what you've connected to Kilo Code, you can do that there too. Those are just some examples of what you might use on your desktop to do this sort of work. We're going to send that in plan mode. Now, this is something you won't always see. This is an MCP server that I have installed. You're welcome to check out my other videos about MCP servers. This helps the AI understand what the application is about. If you don't have MCP servers installed that help the AI understand applications. It'll do it a different way and you won't see those prompts. So yours will operate a little differently than mine will. So you can see here now it's doing that web search that I told it to do. It won't generally do this unless you tell it to search, because the AI is biased to use what it was trained on. But that information can be really out of date because the AI might have been trained months or even a year ago. The documentation will have changed from the vendor that you're using. So you want it to always search for the latest documentation. There are MCP servers that can help with this, but what we're doing here is easily findable on the internet. Next up, what we should be seeing is it's going to ask us a series of planning questions and clarification questions. And those will pop up down here. It's a really neat feature that Claude has integrated in their Claude Code. And you can answer those questions one at a time or ask clarifying questions to make sure it's being done correctly. If you're not super familiar with what's going on here, you can generally go with the recommended option that is offered here, or you can choose something else. I don't mind using Prisma here, so we're going to go ahead and use that. I want to do this as a single Express service. And we're going to change this. This is something that I found in the application. That is, I asked for this application to be built using Claude for the backend of the AI, and it used Gemini. I found out that Lovable is forcing the use of Gemini in the Lovable Cloud. So we're going to change that here. We're going to say we need to change the AI to use Cloud Sonnet 4.5. I can provide the API key. Because there aren't a lot of users, we're going to do a fresh start for this authentication migration. If you had a bunch of users, you would need to do a migrate. But in most cases, if you've gotten to this point with a Lovable app where it's just not quite able to be built the way you want due to their restrictions, you probably don't have a ton of users on there, and a fresh start is going to be easier. Have 2 or 3 users re-sign up and you're good to go. Here I've clicked on the little plan that it made so I can see what it's planning to do. It may extend that plan. I've often seen it start with a little plan and then extend that out as it reads more of the files. We're getting this because we started this conversation in plan mode rather than some sort of action taking mode. While that's running, I'm going to go ahead and set up a database so that we have that and we have the URL. Sometimes that takes 3 or 4 minutes to set up. Sometimes it can take 10 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and initialize that. All we have to do is go to Railway. I'll put a link to this in the description of this video. We're going to tell it new, and we're just going to tell it a database and Postgres here. That will give us a database with a database URL that we can use. And it'll just take a minute to spin. Right here, it has now written a much larger plan for how it's going to do this migration. And we can look at this. It's rather in-depth to build everything we need to migrate this over, but that's the problem with lock-in. And that's why I'm doing this video. So you know exactly that process. Take an app off of Lovable and put it on Railway or anywhere else. You could do this type of conversion to Render or Fly.io or anything like that as well. And we are going to send it on its way and let it just start doing the build here. Over here, Claude is building out the server side of this application that was previously handled by Supabase edge functions, putting that all in here. All right, it says the migration is complete. I absolutely love the confidence here. My guess is it's not fully complete, but now it comes time to test it. So let's take a look at what needs to be set up. We need to put in a database URL, a secret, an API key for Claude, Anthropic, install the dependencies, set up the database, and run the dev server. These are things we can all do locally and test. And then once they're working locally, we will move it up to Railway and do it all again there and test it there. So we want to be able to build and change locally here and then push those changes out. The next thing we're going to do is go get our database URL. And we created this database. It's completely empty right now because we haven't put anything into it. But here in Railway, we can go to variables and it will have the database URL here. Now this is for internal use inside Railway. So if you have the application here, it can talk to this internal database. But on local, we have to use the public URL so that we can actually connect to it from our local machine. So we're going to copy that. We're going to paste it in here as a database URL in our .env. Then we need a JWT secret. It gives us the instructions here, but let me show you how to actually do this because it might not be super clear. We're going to copy this instruction. We're going to go up here to terminal, new terminal. We're going to paste that in and run it. Now we have that key. And we'll go ahead and close that terminal. Now, an Anthropic API key you're going to need to get from Claude. You can get it from the Claude developer platform here. I already have a test one that we're going to use for this application. So let me find that and put it in. I pasted in the key here, and now we have all those variables that it's asked for. So we're going to save that. I did Command S on Windows, you'd Control S, and close that file. Now we need to just continue on with these steps. So we need to install the dependencies. We're going to go back to terminal for that. Do a new terminal. Paste in this command and let it install all the dependencies that it needs. So it's these node modules here, but these are excluded in gitignore right here. So they're not going to be uploaded because there's something any user can just install when they run the app. Now that those are run, we're going to generate our migration here. And then we're going to run that migration. It says the database URL is not found. So I believe we might have a little fairly common issue here where the database URL is not imported correctly. I'm guessing, just from having seen this before, that we are missing the database URL import. Let's go ahead and just debug this. We're going to go here and copy our migration command and the error that it had. We're going to go to a new conversation. This context window is pretty full. And say this. Now you might not know what the error means, so you can just say it like this. I ran this command and got an error. And then you can paste in the error that you got. Here it has done a debugging, and it's going to create a symlink route to the .env file that's here instead of it being in the server. So we're going to tell that yes. There we are. And it's going to run the command for us here if we let it, or we can go down here. We could do that. We say yes and let it run the command. Or we could go down here and just hit our up arrow in the terminal, which will bring that command right back up, and hit enter and test it ourselves. It says no migration found, which means our initial migration command didn't work. So we're going to copy this back here and just paste it in. Now we had a command over here to set up the database, and it doesn't appear that it ran. We're going to take this information that we ran and debug it over here. This is one of those cases where it was fully confident it had completed the migration and it hadn't. That's very common. So you can't necessarily expect that the AI knows that it did things successfully. This is why we test. We're going to tell it we already ran these commands and ask if they're not set up correctly. We can see here that a command was missed, was not included here. We're going to go ahead and run this. And here are migrations now. Do the next command that it gives us here. Make sure that we followed this correctly. Okay, we are set. Let's take a look and see. Here are the tables. This should be empty right now because we haven't seeded it. So now let's go back over to our other conversation that we left open here because we never got to run this seed command. And that should pull everything here and send it to the database. We refresh this. We now have all of those exercises in the table so that they're properly ready for us to use. We'll go back over here now. We installed our dependencies already. Now we're going to see if the dev environment works. We're going to run this npm run dev. We have the database here connected through our .env file. I'll run that here. It says it's running on 3001, so we're going to check. We're going to go to a new tab, type in localhost 3001, and it gives me an error here. Let's see if there was supposed to be a different port. Ah, I see. We're still in the server side, so I need to run this at the root level. So I'm going to do Control-C. That was just me not reading there. We're going to do Control-C, and I'll type in cd space ... That'll take us back to the root, and then we run our command again, npm run dev. Now we have a front end. There it is. What I did there is just start the application on the server side only and not the rest of the application. Now, if we look at our database over here, I doubt we have any users because we didn't choose to import the users. We just said we would create new ones. We're going to go back to the application here. We're going to create an account here. Just put in a name, email, and password. Create this account. And it appears that we were at least able to create the account. So now we've migrated our user creation and auth from Lovable to Postgres. Now we have that user showing up here, which is excellent. Means that that part of the migration is complete. Now that we've done all of these changes, let's go ahead and save them. So we're going to say this is migrate from Supabase to Railway, like this. and sync those changes. So now we have those here. Before we go any further, I want to go and see if this runs without any extra customization on Railway, or if there's some extra customization that we need to do. Just find out where it stands. We're going to go to Railway, right click on GitHub repo, and pull up this repo. We're going to choose this AI workout coach. Then we're going to go into variables here and do a new variable. We're going to copy everything from our .env file into Railway so it has that information. I did a Command A and Command C to copy that. I'm just going to click here and Command V to paste all those variables. So I can just do them all at once. And it ignores all the comment text that we had. And we will click deploy with those variables and see how it behaves. This is pretty expected here. We didn't go through the rest of the process to prepare this to run. Sometimes an application is clear enough that Railway can figure it out and just run it with some default configurations, but this one is not. And that's okay. That's expected here. We're going to view the logs. We're going to click this, copy them as plain text or CSV or JSON, it doesn't matter. We're going to go back over here to our Claude Code and do a new conversation. We're going to say, I want to run this on Railway and I'm not sure it's prepared correctly. See if there's some issues with the prep or commands. Here is the build log that failed. This is going to tell Claude what went wrong in the build. It'll have the error right there. Sometimes the errors are multiple layers. So we might solve one and then encounter another. We're going to let it read the application. This is a new conversation. It has to rebuild its context of what's going on and what the application is built like. Doing a new task in a new conversation is always how you want to do this. It's checking out what's on GitHub right now. Here we're going to write the file that tells Railway how to build this. It's added a health check endpoint without first checking to see if that exists. Now it says it exists, but we need to include the Vite dependencies here. So we're going to let it do that edit. Here's that health check endpoint. We're letting it go ahead and set up the rest of this configuration for Railway to give it a direct instruction here. After these changes, before we go and push that back out, we're going to turn the app off and turn it back on again. To do that, we're going to go into the terminal that we have open, hit Control-C, and that will end the application. Here it says it has fixed it. So we are going to run it again. I hit the up arrow to do npm run dev because that was my last command. Just make sure that we can still get in locally. And here it remembered my information. There we are. So it's still operational locally. Let's go take a look here. Next thing we need to do is commit these changes to GitHub and sync those up. And what that's going to do is go ahead and start the build all over again because Railway is watching GitHub for those changes. And since we just made those changes, it checks to see if they will run. And here it appears to have failed right away again. We're going to copy that down. It still didn't get Vite installed. I'm asking it if we need to move Vite to a dependency instead of a dev dependency. I've seen this issue happen a couple times, and that was the fix. So we're going to see. So what we're doing here is just cleaning this up to test again. Sometimes it takes a few iterations of taking an application that was built on Lovable or somewhere else to run them on a different server. We're just going through the steps to do that. Right now we are frolicking and considering. Let's go ahead and test these changes. Going to stage those and sync them, and we should have the build start pretty much immediately here. Now this build is running, and we're going to see if it can finish compiling the application. We have it running on our computer here. We could build a workout here randomly out of a bunch of exercises and start that workout. Now it has a timer going, and we can do our sets here. This is built for mobile. So we can see here that it looks much better on a phone layout, which is the goal. It's also downloadable as a web app right here, which was part of our initial build in the application. This is looking much more correct. There's our build, 80 seconds. Let's see if it deploys. It says it is running on port 8080. So now we're going to close this, go into settings, give this a domain, and see if it's running. All right, we're going to check and see what Railway has. Well, actually, it looks like we are in business now. That last change did the trick, and we are functional. So now we are deployed on Railway. Let's see if we can sign in with that user that I created. And there we are. We can resume the workout that I started. We can potentially finish that workout. There it is. There's our workout that we didn't actually do. Now we have migrated this application from Lovable Cloud, where it was stuck, and recreated the backend first locally on our computer and then in Railway. So now we have full control of everything in this application. We're not stuck in anybody's system. We can do whatever we want here, use any AI, not just Lovables, but any AI tool that we want to edit and optimize and clean up and extend this application. That is the process that you will follow. Yours will possibly be a little bit different, but those are in general the steps that you will follow to migrate an application from Lovable Cloud to Railway. As a recap, we used Claude Code for this and Visual Studio. We also used Railway as a service, and I will put all of those links in the description of this video. And if you like this video, please go ahead and like and follow, subscribe to the channel so you see any updates we post here, and I will see you on the next one.